40k gets a tiny little rules update for the Imperial agents. We've got a quick look at Games Workshop's copyright system in action, and some very Tyranid heavy issues of the Combat Patrol magazine coming out. Let's do a roundup of some 40k news. Hello and welcome back to Warspec Tactics, where today we're back for another small roundup of 40k news, a few things that I found interesting but didn't really need an entire video all to themselves. Let's talk rules updates, GW enforcing their copyright, these Tyranid Combat Patrol issues, and a rather fun Orky army being raffled away for charity. First up, let's start with a small update to the Warhammer 40k rules, and it seems that the Imperial agents have got their post-codex rules update. In general, Games Workshop system tend to be that the codex comes out, and then around 4 weeks or so down the line they tend to drop the errata, mainly aimed as a bug fix to iron out mistakes. They don't usually tend to do any sort of major balance changing in this, though just very occasionally they do seem to break their own rules and choose to. For the Imperial Agents Codex, I think they're hoping for something and anything really. Their reinterpretation of the Agents of the Imperium to be able to field them as their own standalone army, sort of. I think it was a fun enough idea to be able to field Inquisition all on their own. The way it's been implemented is kind of a cobbled together army of a whole bunch of kill team kits for the most part, and outside of some low point level fun and fluffy games, I feel like they're going to have real issues against most armies out there. I was interested as to whether or not they'd make any major changes to the index. An obvious one could be giving them a faction rule, given that they only have the one for allying to other armies and don't get their own rule when they're fielded independently, which is kind of weird. But taking a look at the errata that appeared when Games Workshop updated their website, it seems that the rules changes are incredibly minimal, basically two things that change the Inquisitorial Agents and the Void's Men at Arms. Tweaking the way that they work in terms of army slots, saying that they don't count towards the number of retinue units if there's at least one Voidfarers or Inquisitor character, depending on the unit. So basically, if you take an Inquisitor with the Inquisitorial Agents, then the Inquisitorial Agents don't take up a retinue slot, so you could use it for something else like Deathwatch Veterans, for example. And the same with their Navigator and the Void's Men at Arms. I think for most armies that changes pretty well nothing. The effect of the rules change is that previously those characters had to join the unit to make them a free retinue slot, and that sort of didn't really work too well with the army construction rules, as you only attach characters when you play games as opposed to when you build your army. I guess in theory it means that you could cram a few more retinue units into an army if you'd already used up your max slots, and potentially field them independently of the Inquisitor, or if you were fielding the Inquisitor with something else perhaps. I think in reality though it's not going to be something that a whole load of armies were really limited by in any way. At 70 points for allies, the Void's Men at Arms just aren't very efficient for a small unit. There's better choices for chaff units out of the allies thing, and the Inquisitorial Agents were maybe a little bit more interesting at 60 points per 6 of them, but again not really exactly the sort of thing that you'd really want to spam. Maybe a slightly minimal investment infantry unit for something like Imperial Knights at best really. I guess one impact could be that you could have slightly more dedicated transports if you could field all those retinue units separately, but again that's not really something that anyone was trying to do seriously, unless you were just trying to do it for the meme. Kind of interesting they overlooked one fix that a few people noticed when the codex came out. Basically that there was a slightly broken rule in that you could do sort of nesting rhinos one inside another, as the Imperial Rhino says that it can transport any Agents of the Imperium model, and that includes things like the transports. They didn't decide to restrict it just to infantry or any one type for some reason. Kind of funny that that's still there. There's not really too much point to doing it in practice though. I guess what help they get, if anything, might be coming either in the next balance update or the actual balanced data slate when that comes in January sort of time. I think it would be kind of nice if they could compete with the other armies out there, though it does feel like Games Workshop maybe have their work cut out for them, unless they just want to do something like slash all the points costs and make the army a bit of a horde style board control sort of faction. Next up, I thought I'd just cover one example of Games Workshop's bringing its copyright and trademarks to bear. Maybe not the most single interesting example, but kind of shows where Games Workshop seem to draw the line and the things that they do tend to go after with all the cottage industries that make things in and around Warhammer 40k, whether it's things like terrain, near equivalent miniatures, or gaming accessories, as in this case. Recently on the channel I featured a Kickstarter for a project by Battle Kiwi to make a 40k battle box. The previous videos are sponsored, though this one isn't. I was more interested just to cover it as a follow-up with what happened to it. Basically the Kickstarter got briefly taken down by Games Workshop copyright notice before the offending material was removed, and then after they did that, the Kickstarter was just allowed to be reinstated again. but I found the thing that they objected to perhaps to be one of the more interesting things. It seems that the single bit that Games Workshop objected to was the use of their slightly hilarious Kiwi New Zealand style Imperial killer in their product. Definitely some similarities with the original design, but the nice great big curved beak that clearly sets it apart from your normal eagle there. It is kind of funny that so many places can get away with things sort of being things that seem aimed to work with Warhammer 40k, whether it's miniatures, terrain or other things, but in terms of what Games Workshop actually takes action against, it's more commonly things like their actual trademarks, which they have a set list of, a whole bunch of different icons and logos, past and present, plus a whole bunch of words, typically names for their races and factions and things. For example, Necrons and Tyranids are under their copyright protection. So perhaps as you might expect, if he decides to create an army and brand it Necrons, then Games Workshop's lawyers are probably going to have something to say about it. I think beyond things that really clearly step on their symbology or naming, they tend to have at least a slightly lighter touch compared with what people might expect them to have. To my understanding, they probably don't want to have too many cases actually wind up going to court and things, as when that happens, they at least have the chance that they could be ruled against them, that certain things that they claim as their IP might be a bit more general purpose than they want them to be, so it might make them a little bit wary. I did find the timing kind of interesting as well. Basically that Kickstarter had been really quite popular, £15,000 or so worth of money raised, and then the copyright strike was handed out to them in the last 48 hours or so before it was due to finish. Not sure if that was just when they got round to it or deliberately to maximise disruption to them. In any case, it seems like Kickstarter is at least fairly good at getting things resolved if you're able to modify your product not to have the offending things on it. The project apparently gets put on hold as opposed to being cancelled outright, and it seems that given that this was a digital product where they can modify the STLs and things, they could even use the same artwork and photo shoots that they had, but just do a little bit of photoshopping to take out the offending logos. They had a whole bunch of these on their score trackers here, for example. In any case, I found that kind of interesting, how Games Workshop goes about enforcing its copyrights. I think in general, from what I've heard most of the time, if you're happy to not contest it and change designs and things, just tweak them enough to be a little bit more different. A lot of 3D printing creators and things can get by without too much trouble. As ever with copyright things though, it's definitely a system that could easily be open to abuse. It's not really like any individual creator could afford to stand against Games Workshop and their legal team, even if they fired off a bogus claim. But I feel like that's more of the world's copyright system than any one company, I guess. In any case, the project's back online now. Apparently it's got another 12 hours or so to go if you did want a custom 40k battle box organizer type thing. The project's for the STL files for an FDM printed version of it. They do have a physical battle box as well made in MDF. I'll leave the link down in the video description. Next up, we've got the next couple of issues for the Combat Patrol magazine, the Hachette Partworks magazine that's been coming out in the UK, likely coming to the USA in spring 2025, and plenty of other places around the world in the same year. In the UK, I believe we're now at issue 4, the one with the paints and the paintbrush. Issue 5 is the unique Infernus Marine, which is kind of likely to be in shorter supply than some, given it's a unique Space Marine sculpt. And then after that, we had issue 6 confirmed to be Barbgaunt, perhaps one of the most interesting ones so far, besides the heavily discounted first two. £10 in store for a unit that would normally cost £28 directly from Games Workshop, so potentially useful to Tyranid collectors wanting to pick up the unit. Seems that the release date for this one in the UK is on the 9th of October. The issues for this one are still available to pre-order from Forbidden Planet, I think. I'll leave a link to that down in the video description. They charge you an extra £3.50 shipping, so a bit more expensive rather than picking one up in person. That has the advantage of being a bit more reliable than trying to find one in store if supply isn't exactly huge in your area. Over the past day or two though, it looks like issues 7 and 8 have also leaked. These ones previewed on the back of one of the previous issues, and weirdly enough it looks like they're both the same miniature contents. Looks like all of the termagants that were coming are coming in one go. In issue 7 there's the first batch of 10 of them with a Ripper Swarm, and then in issue 8 there's another batch of 10 of them with a Ripper Swarm. I guess we knew they were going to be coming at some stage, given that they're part of the Space Marine and Tyranid starter sets. I'd say perhaps compared with most though, it's probably not going to be the most sought after set of issues right now. Even if the on-paper discount is good versus termagants bought separately, in general you can tend to find them online second-hand for just a little bit more than the cost of the Combat Patrol magazine. Places like eBay tend to have them around about £13 or so in the UK, including postage. I feel like if you started collecting Tyranids in 10th edition, there's a good chance that you've probably got an abundance of Fleshborer termagants out there. Though if for whatever reason you don't, I suppose this could be a particularly cheap way to get some more. £10 for 10 Gaunts and a Ripper base. Again, at least compared with most 40k models, it's a good deal, but these ones have been available very cheap for quite a while. Again, if you're in the UK, I'll leave the links to the Forbidden Planet pre-order links. They don't have the photo up, but we can see that it will be these from this leaked image. I guess that for the Combat Patrol run, the really good deals will start to drop when we get past the Space Marines and the Tyranid style issues, as a good chunk of the stuff there has been available very cheaply from Leviathan and starter sets. I guess the Terminator Librarian and the Chaplain on Bike for the Space Marines should be kind of good. Maybe the full Terminator squad as well, and the Tyranid should get the Parasite and Mortrex, which could be one to look out for too. Finally, I thought I'd just cover a charity event that I got contacted by the Nova Open Charitable Foundation called the Battle Against Breast Cancer, raising some money for some good causes, with a whole host of tournaments and events, and then a bunch of high-profile charity raffles where they get a bunch of very talented miniature painters to create something truly quite special, and then raffle it off with the proceeds going to some nice charities. It sounds like they've got quite a good conversion rate on the amount of money that gets donated goes to the charity. Around about 80 to 90% of the money raised goes directly there. They seem to support quite a range of good causes, lots of medical charities in there, and particularly cancer ones. Tournaments around the world can sign up to give a portion of their proceeds to the charity and affiliate with them if they'd like to. And they've got a couple of charity raffles going on, one that's active at the moment for this Mighty Star War, a very greenskin reimagining of a galaxy a long time ago and far, far away. Some of the models in that are pretty snazzy. They've been featured on a bunch of other YouTube channels as well. A bunch of boys with some Stormtrooper armour there, and a big stomper thing that seems to be done up as a Rancor. Otherwise, we've also got some cool things like a fast vehicle acting up as a snowspeeder, I think, plus a great big lumbering orky looted AT-AT. Apparently all of this is the work of a Mark Peasant and Jameson Dundas, who have spent a fairly massive amount of time on it, working with a bunch of 3D printed sculptors to make something truly unique. We've also got an orky Darth Vader as well, with a snazzy glowing chopper. If you did want to donate some money to a good cause and be in with a small chance of winning this, tickets for this one are $12, which I'll leave links down in the video description. Apparently they ship worldwide for free if you win. The profits for this raffle go to Breast Cancer Research Foundation, the Alzheimer's Association, and Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And apparently they've made a code Auspex Tactics for 15% off if you buy 3+ tickets and spend over $25. In any case, one chance to support a good cause there, and kind of cool to see some ridiculously high-level hobby donated by some generous creators to the cause. There's also a bunch more charity raffles apparently going live on the 1st of October. Including a rather awesome shadowy Hormagaunt, Ragnar Blackmane, and this rather awesome Knight Lancer here, and plenty of other stuff. Again, feel free to check them out on the website linked below. In any case, I'll leave that one there this time. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, as always. What are your hopes for the future of the Imperial Agents change, impressions of the next Combat Patrol magazines, and Games Workshop's IP policies? Look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k news and updates coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. And finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description down below. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, occasional votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.